Hey friends, this is a very different video coming from me today. It's not a grocery haul, no coupon deals or anything like that. This is a very special video, I believe, so I thank you for clicking on this. If you're a normal subscriber, this might give you a little bit more insight of my motherhood journey, which was very different, especially for the first year of my son's life. And this video is in honor of him. Next week, Tuesday, is his 4th BMT birthday. BMT standing for bone marrow transplant, and he's a survivor and he's thriving ever since. So this is a story time today. If you're not interested in listening, because there is a lot of, sad moments that I'll be talking about, go watch another video. I have a full-on playlist of grocery hauls and stuff, which is a lot more uplifting. But in order for me to keep going on this little YouTube journey I'm on, I need to post this video. I contemplated doing it. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to include my son or my husband on this channel, just for them. So let's just get started. If you see me staring down a lot, forgive me. I'm staring at my tablet, which has a lot of important notes on it. So I'm going to try not to leave things out. But yeah, so my son has MPS-1 Hurler syndrome. It is a rare genetic disorder that affects many body systems and can lead to organ damage. Genes that my husband and I gave him either produce the enzyme in low amounts or not at all. And the enzyme, that's my fridge. The enzyme is needed to break down substances called GAGs, not even going to try to pronounce the actual word, which are byproducts of chemical reactions in the body cells. If GAGs are not broken down, they build up in the cell and eventually lead to cell, tissue, and organ damage. So I had a really easy pregnancy. At the end, had an emergency C-section, but nothing too crazy. And hours after your baby's born, they get a newborn screening. So, my husband and I were both young and healthy. We weren't concerned about anything. A week after he was born, we got a really weird phone call from UK or University of Kentucky Hospital about an abnormal screening. And they said that he had tested positive for MPS-1 and we needed to do some further testing. And, we have this newborn baby that we had zero concern about. So we were like, is this a scam? He wasn't born at this hospital, so why are they contacting me? How would they get this information? So we did schedule that appointment, and but of course, in the days of Google, we Googled it, which don't do if you get an abnormal screening. Just wait to talk to a doctor. Got a little freaked out, but was still like, no, it's a false positive. There's no way. Our kid looks completely healthy. He's fine. We did see that doctor, and he took a look at him. Nothing screaming, MPS-1. He did let us know that our son Isaac was the first child in the state of Kentucky to show a positive on the MPS-1 test, because 1 week prior to him being born, they had just started screening for MPS-1 in the state of Kentucky. So, the doctor seemed excited, which my husband and I were like, why are you so excited? It was weird, but it took a while for us to figure out why and why it's so important. We did some tests. They took urine and blood samples and sent it off to Mayo Clinic to double check. 2 weeks later, we got a call from him asking us to come in. And, you know, my husband and I, we're new parents. We're exhausted trying to take care of a newborn baby. And we're like, just tell us over the phone. We don't want to come in. My husband's missing enough work already. So he told us that it was also positive. You know, we were upset. We contacted our pediatrician, which is amazing. She's a really good doctor. We called her, and I don't even think she was just like on call, and she took her time and talked to us and told us that she will contact Cincinnati Children's, and she did. So when my husband and I were ready to give them a call, they'll be expecting our call. So I did that and scheduled an appointment. They did more tests just to like check for the third time that for sure he had it, even though the tests from MPS, from Mayo Clinic, were pointing to positive. He had a lot of gag buildup showing in his urine and no enzyme, or almost no enzyme in his blood. They set up at Cincinnati Children's, they set up a schedule for us. So on Fridays, we would go and drive an hour and a half from our home with our newborn to get, it was basically all day, an ERT, which is an enzyme replacement therapy. It was several hours long, so we just spent the day there. And our transplant doctor, Miss Stella Davies, which she's awesome. If you're in the MPS-1 world, you probably heard of her. And yep, we did that once a week. In the meantime, they were looking for a donor for us, and there was a couple cord blood that were really good matches, and the number 2 choice was a bone marrow donor. For these donors, they're anonymous for at least the first year, and they could tell us very little information. All we knew at the time was that he was a 30-year-old male living within the US, and he was a 9 out of 10 match to my son. So that was good news. We did the ERTs every week until he was admitted in the hospital to prepare for transplant. He got 2 CVC lines in his chest, and because he was so little, I know for older kids they do 1 line, I believe, but because he was so little, they decided to do 2. One would be to put like any like chemo or medication in, and the other was to do daily labs. So he was admitted and got the CVC lines right away and did chemo for about 10 days. Oh, and I forgot to mention how the ERTs are done. They are done intravenously in his arm. I don't know. So at first, they would request the VAT team to come and do like an ultrasound on his arm. But he actually has really good veins, so after a few times, the nurse just felt comfortable doing it, never had an issue. So now he has CVC lines, so they don't have to poke him every time, which is nice, I guess, compared to everything else. So he got the 10 days of chemo. I cannot tell you what chemo he got because I forgot. I guess I can look back on Facebook if I even put that in, but at the time I was just like, we're going to do what we got to do. The chemo is to kill, basically, is to kill his immune system, basically. Kill his immune system so that the donors, the donor cells, that's the word I'm looking for. Hello. The donor cells can enter his body, and his cells, which make the enzyme, are now a part of him. So, yeah, I'm really bad at explaining this. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe next year I'll redo this video because I know I'm not doing a very good job. I'm sorry. So did the chemo, and on June 22nd, his donor, which we knew was an awesome guy because they were able to tell us that, donors have to go in several times from the time that they are selected to actually harvesting his bone marrow cells. And they said that he showed up for every appointment and he was always on time and always tested healthy. They couldn't be sick to do this. So he had to keep healthy himself for my son, for someone he didn't even know, which is amazing. So his donor's cells were harvested on the 22nd, which is day 0 in the BMT counting. The days before were counted as negative when he was getting his chemo and stuff. And on the 23rd, he actually got his transplant. It went smoothly. A nurse was basically in the room all day, just in case he had any reaction. And yeah, it went smoothly. During chemo, he would get a little fussy. He never got a fever or anything. So for about 4 days after transplant, he was a little cranky. He wasn't quite on pain meds or anything yet. He did really well. And at this time, he was only, I should have mentioned this in the beginning, he had just turned 4 months old. He was a little guy. About 4 days later, so day plus 4, was when he really started showing signs of being in pain, being sick. What was it? I can't think of the med right now. But we tried a couple different medicines, and the one that helped him was Dilaudid, which is highly strong. And my son is a champ at taking meds by mouth, and the Dilaudid was a little teeny tiny drop for my 4-month-old, and that's what worked. And we did it maybe twice a day, I think. But yeah, he was sick, really sick for about 10 days. You could tell, like, he's a baby. So my husband and I were there, and we would try to pick him up as much as possible to kind of, hold him so that he wasn't laying flat in a hospital crib. And you could tell he didn't feel good. He was hurting. Just no energy. And at the time, I was nursing him full time. The only formula that my son ever got was basically the first few days after birth. Because of my C-section, it took a little longer for my milk to come in. But up till that point, he was just breastfed. So I was still trying to breastfeed him, and I noticed that he started eating less and less. He just had no energy. He was in pain, which is hard to see a little baby do, which all they know is, eating and sleeping, basically. They don't really play that young yet. So because of that, he got an NG tube, which it's inserted through the nose and goes down to the stomach to nourish him. And we were feeding him my pumped breast milk. So I continued pumping on my normal schedule that I was breastfeeding at, and that really helped with supply and everything. So that was hard, seeing my little guy go through that. On our 5th anniversary, which is about 2 weeks after his initial from his transplant, it was my husband and my 5th wedding anniversary. He's shown signs of feeling better, which was the greatest anniversary gift I think we could ever get. When he was just laying in his hospital crib, either sleeping or if he was awake, he'd just kind of stare. But we had a mobile above his crib, and my husband and I were like in his room late at night on our anniversary just watching TV. And I started noticing him kick, and he was kicking. His eyes are wide open, glued on his mobile. And yeah, it was like night and day. He went from being in severe pain to feeling okay again. My boy was back. So he showed signs of getting better. He took a lot of daily meds, lots. Like, I think when he finally was okay enough to leave, it was still a page and a half of meds. Like, I had a chart. He did develop some GVHD of the skin, which scared the heck out of me because GVHD is graft versus host disease, which can happen in a transplant because basically it's the donor cells, no, it's his cells fighting his donor cells, or is it the other way around? Tell me below, MPS families. And it showed on his skin. He turned kind of red and was like a really bad sunburn, which scared me. But they actually, at the end, they said it was actually pretty mild. It was just tamed by topical steroid and oral steroid. So he had GVHD of the skin. And while in the hospital, he got 2 more months of ERTs just to help his GAG level go down and his ERT level to go up. And we also found out that he had engrafted 100%, and he still is till this day. So that 9 out of 10 match was awesome. He stabilized. He was taking all his meds by mouth. We left to the Ronald McDonald House in Cincinnati at the 6-week mark after being in the hospital. We stayed there for about 2 months. And they were also awesome. It truly was a home away from home. We love them so much. We still go back once a year when he does his yearly checkups, and they really are family to us. And we eventually were able to come home, which was also kind of scary. He still had the CVC lines in. His doctor cleared him to go home because we were only an hour and 15 away from the hospital. So they're like, that's local enough. And if he had gotten a fever or one of his lines broke or something, we would go to UK's pediatric oncology. We had like not rules, but yeah, basically rules and regulations to follow, but we never had to deal with that. We did go back to Cincinnati twice a week. Yeah, so even more than before. And for checkups. And for his first checkup, we found that he had some fluid around the heart that had actually gotten worse. The way that they explained it to me was it's kind of like when you get a bruise. If you get a bruise and they put a little needle under your bruise, some liquid will come out, some fluid. And that fluid had built up around his heart, which can, give him heart problems. And it's something that happens sometimes because of the chemo. All the pain and stuff, that was because of the chemo, not from the actual transplant. So we went back and we stayed for about 10 days. We stayed at the ICU for a couple days and then back to the BMT floor, which felt like home after staying in the ICU. The way they got the fluid out was he went under. He went through surgery for the second time in his first few months really of life. And the doctor there had taken some fluid out, and then they put in a drain that kind of vacuumed, I guess, it out. Probably completely saying it wrong, but took the fluid out. And yeah, he actually ended up pulling the thing out. Oh, and the same as the NG tube. He had that for about 7 days. After our anniversary, we were able to leave it out because he pulled that darn thing out every day and had to get it reinserted every day. My son is extremely feisty, and he also pulled that tube out from his chest that was vacuuming the fluid around his heart. That's my kid for you. yeah, went to the BMT floor, was cleared, still had the 2 CVCs. They weren't worried about that still because he never had an issue with them. Continued getting a few, no, I guess he was done with ERTs, but he did get IVIG once a month, which helps with the immune system. In January, so about a month before his birthday, he got his 2 CVCs out because he was doing well. He was no longer needing IVIG. But we still tried really hard not to get him sick. My son was about 1.5 years when he got his first cold. So for that first 1.5 years, we were really careful. So that's why this whole thing that's going around right now, we're prepared for it. You know, we know to keep things clean and sanitize and just being careful. The only thing my son has going on with him now is he's got hyperpigmentation, and they said that could be either just from like his GVH, which I think that's what it's from, but they believe it might get better or stay the same, which I think it's kind of cool. It kind of looks like he has like leopard spots around his neck, and he still goes back yearly for appointments. Today he just got labs for his thyroid because he has like, it's like just under the average amount of like his level. So he's on very little thyroid meds, which, I mean, it's pretty awesome that he's only on 1 med along with a vitamin. And so he did his labs today and he didn't shed a single tear. Like, that's how cool my son is. And he has 2 little spots on his chest that where the CVCs were. So, yep, I think that's my video. I 100% know that I left out a bunch of details. So MPS families, please help me below. Thank you for listening to this story time. I know it wasn't uplifting at all, but I guess it could be, because my son is just awesome like that. He's a little superhero. This video is not asking for donations. We did the GoFundMe years ago, and that wasn't a fun time. But I still thank everyone for the prayers and donations and everything we received along the way. This video is not asking for any sympathy. This video is just asking, if anything, for you to just be nice to people, because you don't know what they've been through, what their kids have been through. So yes, I know this video is probably a mess, but thank you so much for watching. And I also wanted to include a few more things. If you are a new MPS-1 parent, please feel free to comment below, and I can point you to a much better resources than I am. I'll be free to answer any questions or anything you have as well. I can also email you if you want. And I wanted to include that my son, as I said in the beginning of the video, he's thriving. He's a normal 4.5-year-old boy who runs and jumps and does all the things. He does the climbing and everything. He has no MPS-1 problems, as we can tell, from the top of his head to his feet. And it's extremely common for kids and adults with MPS-1 to have little things pop up throughout their life. Because the transplant that he got and the ERTs, those were just treatments. MPS-1 has no cure. So yep, thank you guys for the prayers. We love you. Bye.